"You call that Spanish?" the agent said, loud enough for the whole interview room to hear. "It sounds like you learned it from a menu." I kept my face neutral, because neutrality is half my job, and the other half is surviving other people's egos. "My name is Marisol Vega, and I am a paid contractor interpreter. Not a mind reader, not a miracle worker, not a decorative accent for federal paperwork. I translate. Precisely. Relentlessly. Even when someone decides to use me as a punching bag to impress a supervisor." Across the table sat Rafael Soria, wrists cuffed, suit jacket still crisp like he had dressed for a business meeting instead of an interrogation. The agents called him a cartel accountant, which was their polite way of saying he moved dirty money with clean handwriting. He looked at me with the calm of a man who believed the world was for sale. The lead agent, Colt Brenner, leaned back and smirked. "Tell him," Brenner said, tapping the folder like it was a drum, "that lying makes things worse." I turned to Rafael. "Dice que mentir empeora todo," I translated, even and clear. Rafael's mouth twitched. He spoke softly, the way men do when they want you to lean closer. "Dígale que su reloj es barato, y su corbata también." I did not even blink. I looked back at Brenner. "He said your watch is cheap, and your tie is too." Brenner's grin collapsed into a scowl. The room temperature shifted. That is how interrogation rooms work. They are not built for comfort. They are built for control, and control is a fragile thing. Brenner pointed at me. "You are enjoying this." "I am translating," I said. "If you want comedy, put a mirror on the table." The second agent, Lena Park, hid a laugh behind her hand. Brenner shot her a look that said, "Betray me again, and I will file it under insubordination." Outside the interview rooms, the real danger was never Raphael. It was the bureaucracy. I worked through Silverquill Language Services, a firm that specialized in bilingual contractors for government work. Our contract with the Federal Organized Crime Bureau was worth enough money to keep the lights on, keep payroll steady, and keep our director, Evan Doss, from stress-eating granola bars like they were medication. Government contracts are not maintained by doing good work. They are maintained by doing good work and then proving you did good work in 5 different formats, on 3 different portals, while someone in procurement demands a wet signature for a digital process. Every week I filed timesheets, conflict of interest attestations, security acknowledgments, and a form that asked if I had received any gifts, favors, or payments from any foreign national, domestic entity, or suspiciously generous stranger. I always checked the same box. No. Raphael watched me translate for nearly an hour. When Brenner pushed, Raphael shrugged. When Brenner threatened, Raphael smiled. When Brenner offered a deal, Raphael looked at me again, like I was the hinge on the door. At the end, Raphael's lawyer arrived, perfume and arrogance in a tailored suit. The room emptied. I gathered my notes, because interpreters have notes the way soldiers have helmets. You might survive without them, but why test fate? In the hallway, Brenner stopped me. "You are paid to be invisible, Vega. Try it sometime." I nodded once, because arguing with a man like Brenner is like arguing with a printer. It is loud, pointless, and somehow your fault when it jams. I went back to the contractor bullpen, where the carpet smelled like old coffee and budget cuts. My email already had 3 new messages from Silverquill Compliance. One reminded me to complete my annual ethics training. Another asked me to resubmit my W-9 because the portal did not like the formatting. The third was from Evan Doss. "Marisol, call me as soon as you can. Urgent." That is how trouble arrives in government work. Not with sirens, with subject lines. When I called Evan, he did not say hello. He said, "Marisol, we have a problem. The Bureau says you took money." For a moment, the world went quiet, except for the hum of fluorescent lights. "What money?" I asked, already knowing the answer would be absurd. "They say a source reported you accepted a bribe from Soria's people." I laughed once, sharp and humorless. If I had cartel bribe money, Evan, I would not be eating vending machine pretzels for dinner. Evan did not laugh back. They are threatening to suspend our contract. They are calling it a security integrity issue. Because someone told a story, I said. Because someone told a story, Evan echoed, voice tight. And in this business, a story becomes a memorandum becomes a directive becomes a disaster. I stared at my screen, at the blinking cursor in a draft email I had not sent. I had spent years becoming dependable, precise, the person people called when the stakes were high and the Spanish had to be perfect. And now, with one rumor, I was a liability. Rafael Soria had looked at me like the world was for sale. It turned out he was not the only one shopping. The suspension notice arrived the way bad news always does, as a PDF with too many acronyms and not enough humanity. Silverquill's contract liaison forwarded it with the subject line, "Immediate action required," like urgency was a substitute for clarity. The Bureau had paused my access pending review. That is government language for, "You are guilty until paperwork proves you are not." Evan Doss called an emergency meeting in our tiny conference room. The room had a glass wall meant to look transparent and modern, except the frosting on the lower half made everyone inside look like silhouettes in a fish tank. The team gathered: payroll, compliance, our scheduler, and Evan, who looked like he had aged 5 years since my last timesheet submission. "We need to respond fast," Evan said, rubbing his forehead. "The Bureau wants documentation, proof of non-payment, proof of ethics compliance, proof of all communications related to the Soria interviews." I stared at him. "They want proof I did not do something." "Yes," Evan said. "Welcome to federal contracting." Compliance slid a stack of forms toward me, and I swear I heard the paper sigh. "We need you to sign a sworn statement," said Jules Mercado, our compliance manager. "Also, we need a full disclosure of contacts, any unexpected calls, texts, or approaches." My mouth tightened. "I translate in interrogation rooms. People approach me every day, mostly with insults." Jules did not smile. Bureaucracy does not appreciate humor. "List anything unusual." I thought about Raphael's calm eyes, about his soft voice, about the way he spoke like he was placing an order. He had offered, yes. Not in words Brenner would have heard, not in English. He had said, "We take care of people who take care of us." He had said it like a compliment, and I had translated it exactly as what it was, a threat wrapped in a promise. "I was approached," I said. "I rejected it, immediately." Evan exhaled. "Did you report it?" "I told Agent Park," I said, "in the hallway. I used the phrase bribe attempt so it would stick in her head. She told me she would note it." Jules tapped a pen. "We need evidence." "Ask the Bureau," I said. "They record everything in those rooms." Evan looked pained. "They do. But now we are on the wrong side of their trust. They will move like molasses, and they will charge us for the spoon." Over the next days, my life became an assembly line of compliance rituals. I wrote a statement, then rewrote it to match the Bureau's template. I logged into a contractor portal that rejected my password twice, and then demanded a security question about a street I had never lived on. I uploaded bank statements, but the portal only accepted files under a size limit, apparently designed for the year that flip phones were popular. Silverquill's attorneys requested a meeting with the Bureau's contracting officer. The officer, Marvin Klein, responded with a calendar invite titled "Integrity Discussion," which is a phrase that sounds noble until you realize it means, "We think you lied." On the day of the meeting, I sat in a government building lobby holding a visitor badge that felt like a scarlet letter. Brenner walked past me without stopping. His eyes flicked over me like I was a stain on the floor. Lena Park did stop. "Marisol," she said low, "this is stupid." "Stupid is not a defense," I replied. She leaned in. "Someone filed a confidential tip. They said you received cash after an interview. They described your purse." "My purse?" I repeated, incredulous. So now I am convicted by handbag. Park's jaw tightened. They want a scapegoat. Klein is under pressure. The case is high profile. They got embarrassed by a leak last month, so now everyone is hypervigilant. Hypervigilant. Another word for panicked. Inside the meeting room, Evan presented documentation like he was offering sacrifices. Bank statements, ethics training certificates, my signed statements, my contractor history, my performance notes from previous cases. He built a mountain of evidence, and the bureau responded by asking for a different mountain. Klein looked at me over his glasses. Ms. Vega, are you aware that accepting money from a subject or affiliate is grounds for criminal referral? I am aware, I said. I am also aware that I did not accept anything. Brenner finally spoke. Then why does a source say you did? Because your subject wants leverage, I said calmly. And because a rumor is cheaper than a bullet. Brenner's face twitched. Evan made a tiny choking sound, the noise of a man watching his contract evaporate. Klein shuffled papers. We will continue the review. That review could take months, Evan said, voice strained. You will bankrupt a vendor over a story. Klein shrugged. Integrity is priceless. I wanted to laugh. Integrity, priceless, said by the man who made everyone bill their hours in 6-minute increments. When the meeting ended, Park caught up to me in the corridor. Do not let them break you, she said. I looked down at my visitor badge. They do not have to break me, I said. They just have to bury me under forms. And while the bureau slowly chewed through paperwork, Rafael Soria sat in a holding facility, comfortable as a king, waiting for the bureaucracy to do what it does best: make the innocent tired. Silverquill nearly lost the contract on a Tuesday, which felt fitting, because Tuesdays exist solely to test human patience. Evan called me late in the early morning, voice tight. Klein issued a cure notice, he said. A what notice? A cure notice, Evan repeated, like naming a disease. They say we have failed to provide a contractor who meets trust standards. They are giving us a short window to fix it, or they terminate for cause. I sat at my kitchen table staring at my mug of tea. I had not even added sugar. I was too angry for sweetness. So their solution is to ruin us faster, I said. Pretty much, Evan said. Also, Klein is demanding we replace you immediately. My fingers curled around the mug. Replace me with who? With anyone, Evan said. In their minds, bilingual is interchangeable. I pictured a clipboard person somewhere thinking Spanish was an accessory. Tell him to try, I said. Most interpreters who can handle cartel interrogations do not also enjoy being treated like disposable office supplies. Evan made a weary sound. We are assembling a response packet. Jules is pulling every file we have. We need one decisive thing: proof that you refused the bribe and reported it. I told Park, I said again. Yes, Evan said, but we need paper, or audio, or an email, something bureaucrats can staple to other bureaucrats. That is the secret of government work. Reality does not count unless it has a reference number. A few days later, Park called me from an unknown number. I have something, she said. My pulse jumped. What? There is an internal memo, she said. I wrote it after you told me about the bribe attempt. I submitted it to our case file system. It got buried in the task queue, but it exists. I closed my eyes. Can you retrieve it? I can request it, Park said. But Klein controls release. He is not friendly. Then we go around him, I said. Park paused. You want to go around a contracting officer? I want to go around incompetence, I replied. If those overlap, that is not my problem. Park exhaled. There is also the recording. The interrogation recording? Yes, she said. Soria made the approach in Spanish. Brenner did not understand. It is on tape. My anger sharpened into something cleaner. So they accused me without listening to their own recording. Correct, Park said. Of course, I muttered. That would have been too efficient. Evan and Jules filed a formal request for the recording and the memo, citing due process concerns and material relevance. Those words got attention because government people respect only two things: hierarchy and liability. Klein delayed. Then Klein delayed again. Then Klein asked for a different form. Then he asked for the same form, but with a different date. The process felt like being pecked to death by very polite birds. Finally, Silver Quill's attorneys escalated to the Bureau's internal ethics office. A week later, we were granted a supervised review of the recording. They sat me in a small room with an audio console and a stern analyst named Wren Hollis. Hollis looked like she ironed her emotions every morning. "You will not copy this," she said. "I do not need to copy it," I replied. "I just need you to hear it." They played the audio. Raphael's voice flowed through the speaker, smooth as oil. He said in Spanish, "We can make your life easy. Your firm too. You will not worry about contracts again." Then he described where to place the money, how simple it would be, and how unfortunate it would be if I refused. He did not whisper. He did not hint. He offered like a man used to buying outcomes. On the recording, my voice answered, crisp and cold, "No. Do not ask me again. I am reporting this." Then I spoke in English to the agents, translating it openly, refusing the bribe in both languages, making sure it landed. When the audio ended, the room was silent except for the machine's low hum. Wren Hollis stared at the console like it had personally offended her. "So," Hollis said slowly, "you refused." "Yes," I said, loudly, in two languages. Hollis cleared her throat. "And you reported it?" "Yes," I said again. "Immediately." Hollis's gaze shifted to Klein, who had reluctantly attended. His face had the sheen of a man realizing he had stood on a rake. Park's memo was retrieved the next day. It was stamped, filed, time-indexed. It described my report. It described Raphael's attempt. It described Brenner's lack of Spanish comprehension with a politeness that still managed to be devastating. Evan delivered the packet to the Bureau with a cover letter so sharp it could cut glass. Jules included a compliance timeline and a formal complaint about procedural negligence. Then we waited, because waiting is the official pastime of anyone working under government contracts. At last, a new email arrived from Klein. Subject line, "Review outcome." I opened it and read the words twice to make sure they were real. No evidence of wrongdoing by Ms. Vega. Allegation unsubstantiated. Access to be reinstated. Contract to remain active. I felt relief, but it was not warm relief. It was cold relief, the kind that comes after someone tries to burn your house down and then says, "Oops." Evan called immediately. His voice cracked with exhausted joy. "You are cleared," he said. "Cleared," I repeated. "What about the apology?" Evan hesitated. "It says they will address communications, which means they will probably send a carefully worded non-apology." I looked at my hands, steady now. "Then I will write my own ending," I said. Because Rafael Soria had not just tried to buy me, he had tried to erase me. And I had learned something important from bureaucracy. If you want justice, you do not shout. You document. The Bureau apologized the way institutions do, with a meeting invite and a statement that never used the word sorry until someone forced it to. They brought me into a conference room with a long table, a bad speakerphone, and enough bottled water to survive a siege. Klein sat stiffly, Brenner looked irritated that consequences existed, and Wren Hollis sat with a folder labeled Corrective Actions. Evan Doss joined by video because Silver Quill had learned a painful lesson. Do not give the government easy access to your people unless there is a subpoena or snacks. Klein cleared his throat. "Ms. Vega, we have concluded our review. You have been reinstated." "I read the email," I said. "I am fluent in bureaucrat." Hollis's mouth twitched, possibly the closest she got to a smile. Brenner stared at the wall like it owed him money. Klein continued, voice formal. "We recognize the allegation caused reputational harm. We regret any inconvenience. Inconvenience, I echoed. You tried to terminate my livelihood. That is not a flat tire. Evan's video feed flickered as he leaned closer. This nearly terminated our contract, he added. Your office issued a cure notice based on a tip you did not verify with your own recording. Klein's ears reddened. Procedures were followed. Hollis opened her folder. That is not accurate, she said calmly. Procedures were attempted, then abandoned, then replaced by panic. Brenner finally spoke. We were protecting the case. You were protecting your pride, I said. You did not understand Spanish, so you assumed I was the problem. That is not protection. That is laziness with a badge. The room went quiet. Klein swallowed. Hollis looked at him like a disappointed librarian. After a long pause, Klein said, Ms. Vega, I apologize. There it was. 2 words, late and thin, but real enough to count. I nodded once. Accepted, I said, because I was not going to be the one to keep the drama alive. Silverquill did something the Bureau never did. They recognized the damage and the work required to repair it. Evan called me later and told me to come to the office. When I arrived, the front desk had a small sign that read, Contract Integrity Award, like we were in a world where integrity could be framed. Evan met me with a tired smile and a check envelope. We are giving you a bonus, he said. Not because they cleared you, because you carried this mess with grace while we fought the paper war. I opened the envelope and stared. It was not life-changing money, but it was dignity in numerical form. Thank you, I said quietly. Evan leaned in. Also, you are getting a new title, Senior Field Interpreter, more protections, more authority to report directly to compliance if an agent tries to bully you again. Excellent, I said, because I have a growing allergy to grown men with fragile egos. Evan laughed, then sobered. Marisol, I need to tell you something else. What now? The Bureau asked if you can return to the Soria case, Evan said. They want you back in the room. Of course they did. Bureaucracy loves to break a thing, then request it in pristine condition. I agreed, because my work mattered, and because Rafael Soria had started something he did not finish. A few days later, I was back in the interrogation suite. Rafael sat in the same chair, cuffs gleaming, expression confident. Brenner stood behind the table like a man determined to reclaim authority by standing near it. Rafael glanced at me and smiled. Volviste, he said. You came back. I translated. He said I returned. Brenner grunted. Tell him he is running out of time. I turned to Rafael. Dice que se le acaba el tiempo. Rafael's eyes were bright with amusement. Dile que mi tiempo es dinero, y el dinero siempre encuentra una salida. I looked at him, then at Brenner. He said his time is money, and money always finds an exit. Rafael leaned forward, voice low, intimate. Marisol, you could still be comfortable, he said in Spanish. Everyone here has a price, even the ones who pretend they do not. I did not translate that part right away. I let the silence hang, sharp as a knife. Then I looked at Brenner. He is offering again, I said. He is also threatening again. Brenner stiffened. What exactly did he say? I smiled, small and cold. It is in Spanish. I can repeat it slowly if you would like to learn. Raphael's smile slipped. He had expected fear. He had expected gratitude. He had expected the world to behave like a marketplace. Instead, he got me. A woman cleared by their own evidence, backed by a firm that now understood her value, and armed with the one thing cartels hate more than cops: documentation. And then, a week later, my revenge arrived by accident. A clerk dropped an audio file into the wrong secure folder. It landed in the interpreter queue, flagged for language identification. No case name, no context, just a scratchy recording and a reference number. I listened, and my spine went cold, because Raphael's voice was on it, and he was not talking to agents. he was talking to his people. The audio file sounded like it had been recorded through a wall. Muffled voices, metallic echoes, a faint buzz like old wiring. The system labeled it as unknown language, which would have been funny if it had not been so dangerous. I recognized Spanish immediately. Not the neat Spanish of courtrooms, the street Spanish of men who believed consequences were for other people. I should have routed it back to the clerk with a note. That is what bureaucracy expects. Follow the lane, do not touch the steering wheel. Instead, I opened a new incident log because I had learned the hard way that nothing exists unless it has a form. I listened again. I took notes in shorthand. I marked speaker changes. I flagged key phrases without embellishing them. No heroics, no drama, just precision. Then I heard Rafael Soria's voice, unmistakable, and my stomach tightened. He was describing a scheme, not in step-by-step detail for me to replicate, but in broad strokes that revealed intent, coordination, and timing. He referenced deliveries and ledgers and a safe harbor arrangement with someone inside a logistics contractor. He mentioned payments disguised as vendor fees. He mentioned moving communications through harmless recordings that would never be examined because the gringos do not listen. He said that line with a laugh. I paused the file and sat very still. The room around me looked ordinary. Gray walls, humming air vent, a stack of forms waiting for signatures. The kind of environment where you could miss history happening because the printer was out of toner. I thought about the accusation, about Klein's cure notice, about Brenner's smirk, about how quickly they had been willing to ruin me because it was easier than admitting they did not understand what I did. Fine, I thought. If they wanted to treat language like a weapon, I would show them what it could do. I did not run to Brenner. Brenner would make it personal, and personal was messy. I went to Ren Hollis, because Hollis respected only evidence. I requested a meeting through the ethics channel. I attached my incident log. I tagged it urgent and material relevance. I used their words, because bureaucracies only respond to their own vocabulary. Hollis met me in a small office. "You listened to the file," she said. "I did," I replied. "You were not assigned to Soraya's investigative team," she noted. "I was assigned to language identification," I said. "Language identified. Concern documented." Hollis studied me for a long moment. "Play the relevant segment." I did. Raphael's voice filled the room, smug and certain. When he said the line about nobody listening, Hollis's expression sharpened like glass. Hollis stopped the audio. "This suggests an ongoing conspiracy," she said. "It suggests arrogance," I replied. "And arrogance makes people sloppy." Hollis nodded once, then opened her folder and began doing what she did best, turning truth into process. She generated a referral. She notified the Bureau's investigative arm. She requested authorization to treat the recording as actionable intelligence. Every step required a signature. Every signature required a timestamp, and every timestamp required a witness, because bureaucracy believes the world is held together by paperwork and mild paranoia. It took longer than it should have. Of course it did. A supervisor wanted additional verification. Another demanded chain of custody assurance. Someone asked if an interpreter could be biased. Hollis answered them with my cleared status, my incident log, and the fact that the recording spoke for itself. Paper beat doubt. Slowly, relentlessly, paper won. A few days later, Park called me. Her voice was tight with excitement. "They moved," she said. "Who moved?" "The task force," she replied. "Your translation triggered warrants. They hit 2 locations connected to Soria's network. They grabbed 3 mid-level operators and 1 logistics liaison. Soria is furious." I felt something settle inside my chest. Not joy, but balance. "Good," I said. Park hesitated. "Also, Brenner is being reviewed." "For what?" "For filing the accusation without reviewing the tape," she said. "He is not enjoying it." "Tell him I regret any inconvenience," I said sweetly. Park laughed, short and delighted. You are terrible. I am accurate, I corrected. There is a difference. The Bureau issued a formal letter a few days later, printed on heavy paper like weight could replace humility. It acknowledged my clearance, my integrity, and the procedural failure that had led to the accusation. Klein's signature sat at the bottom like a reluctant bow. Silverquill framed a copy in the office. Evan emailed the whole company, praising professional excellence under pressure and the value of rigorous documentation. Jules added a new training module titled How Not to Accuse the Interpreter. Rafael Soria was transferred after the arrests. His leverage snapped. When I saw him again in a hallway, he looked smaller, like a man realizing money does not buy oxygen. He leaned toward me as agents guided him past. You think you won, he said in Spanish. I looked at him, calm as a sealed envelope. I did not win, I answered in Spanish. I translated. Then I turned to the escorting agent and said in English, he said he has nothing further to add. Because in the end, my revenge was not loud. It was filed, stamped, routed, and undeniable. And it put the right people in handcuffs.